Hello, this module explains how countries and institutions who have never reported TOSSD data can report on TOSSD. If you are new to the new statistical measurement system TOSSD itself, you can also have a look at our introduction module that you can find on the TOSSD website www.tossd.org. This module contains 6 sections. The first will introduce you to reporting. The second will give an overview of the main concepts and definitions used in the TOSSD statistical framework. Then there will be an explanation of the TOSSD Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. The fourth section presents the TOSSD reporting form and items. The following section provides some inputs on how to build a TOSSD reporting system. At the end of this module, there will be a brief summary of this module's key points. The objective of this module is to provide comprehensive guidelines for reporting to TOSSD to countries and institutions that have never reported TOSSD data. At the end of the seminar, you will be able to have a comprehensive understanding of the TOSSD reporting instructions. You will also be able to explain the different elements in the TOSSD reporting form, apply the different TOSSD eligibility criteria to the reporting practice, and report a first set of TOSSD data. Let's move to the first section that will provide an introduction to reporting. Every year, the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat collects data on resources provided in the previous calendar year by bilateral and multilateral providers, including emerging providers. For example, in 2021, the Secretariat collects data on 2020 expenditures. The deadline for Pillar 1 data submission is on 31st July. For Pillar 2 data, the deadline is a little later, on 1st October. The TOSSD Task Force Secretariat will validate the data by November the 30th and publish the data in December. Reporters should provide TOSSD data at the activity level, and in principle, the objective is to make all TOSSD data publicly available also at activity level. The objective of the reporting process is to have a TOSSD reporting form filled in with all your sustainable development activities. To do this, use the TOSSD data form and code lists. The TOSSD data form includes 28 items. It also includes examples in order to guide the reporter about how to record activities in the TOSSD format, and a separate tab for the reporter to provide supplementary data on private finance mobilized. The goal is to fill in this Excel file. The TOSSD code list will help you fill in the TOSSD data form. The file contains all the classifications and associated codes for reporting on TOSSD, such as the sector codes, financial instruments, etc. You can find the respective links for both documents on the slide. Please click on it to download them. The key reference documents that you will need to use for your TOSSD reporting are the reporting instructions and the explanatory notes. The TOSSD reporting instructions is the main document that includes all statistical concepts and criteria. The explanatory notes for reporters provide key explanations for reporting TOSSD data. Please consult the reporting instructions and explanatory notes when reporting TOSSD data. You can find the respective links for both documents on the slide. Please click on it to download them. A web tool to guide you through your TOSSD reporting also exists. It will guide you step by step on how to record project information in the TOSSD form, providing indications by field. With this tool, you will not need to send an Excel file, as field data will be sent directly to the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat. This tool is recommended for a country or institution with a maximum of 100 activities. Please send an email to tossd.contact@oecd.org if you wish to get the link to the web tool. This section provides an overview of the main concepts and definitions of the TOSSD statistical framework. The information corresponds to the Chapter 1 of the TOSSD reporting instructions. To start with, TOSSD is a new international statistical measure that provides a complete picture of all official resources in support of sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. If you wonder what private finance mobilized by official intervention is, these are private resources that would not have been invested in sustainable development without an official development intervention, such as a guarantee. What is TOSSD? TOSSD is a framework to measure resources in support of sustainable development. Bilateral providers, such as traditional and southern providers, as well as multilateral providers, such as MDBs or UN agencies, report TOSSD data. These TOSSD reporters report data on the official development assistance, other official flows, South-South cooperation, triangular cooperation, spending for international public goods, and private finance mobilized by official interventions. While data on official development assistance flows are fully available, data on other components are only partially available internationally, hence the importance of TOSSD. Activities reported by providers then go through a sustainability test. This means that the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat checks whether these activities contribute to sustainable development or not. If they do not support sustainable development, they are excluded from TOSSD. In the TOSSD framework, data are presented in two different pillars. Pillar 1, that captures cross-border flows to TOSSD eligible countries, and Pillar 2, that captures global and regional expenditures for international public goods. In addition, private finance mobilized is presented separately. There exists a specific concept of sustainability in TOSSD. The TOSSD statistical framework assumes that all resources captured therein should be provided consistent with prevailing global and regional economic, environmental, and social standards and disciplines, with development cooperation effectiveness principles, as well as with the United Nations Charter and international law. Sustainable development is defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainable development in the TOSSD context is inherently linked to the Sustainable Development Goals and the three dimensions of sustainability as agreed in the 2030 Agenda: generating sustainable economic growth, ensuring social inclusion without compromising the environment. In the TOSSD context, an activity is deemed to support sustainable development if it directly contributes to at least one of the SDG targets as identified in the official list of SDG targets developed and maintained by the United Nations Statistical Commission, and if no substantial detrimental effect is anticipated on one or more of the other targets. In the TOSSD reporting instructions, you can find explanations on the terms resources and officially supported. TOSSD aims to capture the entirety of instruments and modalities used by official provider countries and organizations to support sustainable development, including mechanisms that mobilize resources from the private sector. In accordance with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, The term resources in the TOSSD definition covers both financial and technical resources. Therefore, in the context of TOSSD, officially supported resources are defined as resources provided by official agencies, including state and local government, or by their executive agencies, and also by public sector corporations. Moreover, it also covers private resources mobilized by official interventions, where a direct causal link between the official intervention and the private resources can be demonstrated. In TOSSD, international public goods, global challenges, and development enablers play an important role. International public goods, or in short IPGs, are goods which provide benefits that are non-exclusive and available for all to consume, at least in two countries. The term good refers to resources, products, services, institutions, policies, and conditions. Global challenges are issues or concerns that bring disutility on a global scale and that need to be addressed globally. It is important to note that there is a significant overlap between IPGs and global challenges. Global challenges are often the opposite of IPGs. For example, climate change and stable climate. However, not all activities addressing global challenges are IPGs. In TOSSD, only activities with international spillover effect are included. Development enablers are the means that help provide IPGs and/or address global challenges. They often have the characteristic of IPGs. They can be seen as intermediate IPGs as opposed to final IPGs. There are statistical principles that TOSSD underlies. Data collected on TOSSD under these reporting instructions should comply with the United Nations fundamental principles of official statistics. Moreover, the TOSSD statistical framework is also subject to the United Nations Statistics Quality Assurance Framework. TOSSD will ensure the quality of, first of all, the statistical outputs, their relevance, coherence, accuracy, reliability, timeliness, and punctuality, interpretability, and accessibility. Second, it will also ensure the quality of the statistical processes, sound methods, cost efficiency, and non-excessive burden on reporters. Third, it will ensure the quality of the institutional environment, objectivity, impartiality, transparency, and credibility, essential to build trust, which is the very foundation of a statistical system. The main TOSSD measure is calculated on a gross disbursement basis. Gross figures reveal the full scope and nature of external resources provided for sustainable development. The net measure is also calculated for transparency and analytical purposes based on information reported on reflows, which are the amounts received by the provider. TOSSD data are reported in the currency in which the transaction takes place. However, for consolidated data presentations and dissemination, the reference currency is the United States dollar, USD. Data reported in currencies other than USD will be converted to USD using annual average exchange rates. Please note that all other sections of Chapter 1 in the reporting instructions, so paragraph 26 and 32 to 38, will be dealt with in the following slides to avoid repetition. This section presents TOSSD Pillar 1 and 2. You can also find the information in the chapters 2 and 3 of the TOSSD reporting instructions. TOSSD Pillar 1 captures cross-border resource flows in support of sustainable development. This pillar covers resources extended to TOSSD-eligible recipient countries in support of sustainable development by bilateral and multilateral providers. The major breakdown is between grants and in-kind contributions on the one hand, and financial transactions on the other hand. Concessional and non-concessional transactions are separately identifiable. Resources mobilized from the private sector by official interventions are also included. However, they are presented under a separate heading as the funds do not necessarily originate from the provider country and may even be domestic, which means that they originate from the recipient country. The TOSSD framework captures three types of resources from provider countries, multilateral agencies, and pooled funds. First of all, grants and technical assistance are included. Second, debt instruments and equity investments are included as financial transactions. Taken together, both represent the total official flows. TOSSD also presents information on resources mobilized from the private sector through official interventions, regardless of the origins of the funds mobilized. A requirement for an activity to count as TOSSD is that the activity should involve a cross-border resource flows to a country on the list of TOSSD recipient countries. For any reporting year, this list includes all countries and territories that are present on the DAC list of ODA recipients, as well as other countries and territories that have activated the TOSSD opt-in procedure. Any country or territory can activate the opt-in procedures at any point in time. The procedure is voluntary but needs to be motivated through the specific economic, social, and environmental context that the country faces. Traditional donors are expected to not use the TOSSD opt-in procedure. Bilateral providers report activities they undertake directly with the recipient country, A1 in the figure that you can see on the screen. They also report on flows to multilateral institutions, A2 and A3. To complement information on resources to developing countries, in the CRS, multilateral institutions report on B2, which relate to their core resources activities. In the TOSSD system, bilateral providers also report their activities undertaken directly with the recipient country, A1, and it is the multilateral provider that report on all activities they implement, so B1 and B2, since they have more granular information at their disposal. If a multilateral provider reports on all outflows, then the inflows, the contributions they receive from bilateral providers, will be removed from TOSSD to avoid double counting. As an interim arrangement, if a multilateral institution does not yet report to TOSSD, then the inflows to this multilateral are re-included in the TOSSD framework. Bilateral reporters are expected to include all activities channeled through international organizations, whether core or earmarked in TOSSD, in field 14. For the modality, please use B01 for core support to NGOs, other private bodies, PPPs, and research institutes, B02 for core contribution to the general budget of multilateral organizations, and B03 for earmarked contributions to implementing partners or contributions to specific purpose programs and funds. Data will be useful for checking purposes, especially the orders of magnitude, and also to inform the Secretariat about relevant international organizations to approach for collecting TOSSD data in future data collection rounds. Moreover, if a given organization does not report in TOSSD, bilateral contributions to this organization will be used instead and included in TOSSD. TOSSD Pillar 2 captures resources to support international public goods that are necessary for the achievements of the SDGs and to address global challenges such as climate change mitigation. It includes resources deployed at the international, global or regional, or domestic levels and whose benefits are of transnational reach. This includes activities of multilateral, global and regional institutions that promote international cooperation for sustainable development, for example, for the norm setting, international oversight, knowledge generation and dissemination. TOSSD Pillar 2 also captures certain expenditures incurred by providers in their own countries or in non-TOSSD eligible countries, such as in the area of research and development and support to refugees. There exists specific eligibility criteria for TOSSD Pillar 2. A Pillar 2 activity, as any other TOSSD activity, is deemed to support sustainable development if it meets the criteria regarding sustainable development. In addition, for including an activity in TOSSD Pillar 2, it needs to, first of all, provide substantial benefits to TOSSD eligible countries or their populations, and be implemented in direct cooperation with TOSSD eligible countries, such as when a TOSSD eligible country is a member of a multilateral institutions, or to private or public institutions from these countries as a means of ensuring the benefit to TOSSD eligible countries or their populations. This part focuses on the delineation of TOSSD Pillar 1 and 2. Cross-border flows to recipient countries can also support IPGs or development enablers or address global challenges. However, given that a key objective of TOSSD is to enhance transparency of external finance for sustainable development provided to recipient countries, such activities will be categorized as Pillar 1. When the provider first commits funds to a regional program and decides on their allocation by country only at a later stage, both the original regional commitment and the subsequent disbursements by country should be reported in Pillar 1. Multi-country activities, like activities that result in cross-border flows to several countries belonging to the same region, are also reported in Pillar 1 using regional recipient codes. Multi-country activities are reportable under Pillar 1. These multi-country activities include projects implemented in multiple recipient countries with resource transfers to these countries, including on regional public goods, using regional recipient codes or developing countries unspecified if the targeted countries do not belong to the same region. Such an activity is, for example, community protection and resilience activity in Central Africa. If regional projects are implemented at the level of a global or regional institution with no direct resource transfer to individual countries, these should be reported under Pillar 2. Such a project is, for example, the African Human Development Report. This diagram will help you to decide whether an activity should be reported under Pillar 1 or Pillar 2. The starting point is at the right-hand corner of the slide. If the activity supports sustainable development, as defined in paragraphs 10 to 11 and 47 to 49 of the reporting instructions, it can be reported in TOSSD. You could then ask the question whether the activity will involve a cross-border resource flow to the territory of a TOSSD-eligible country. If this is the case, it should be reported under Pillar 1. If this is not the case, the question is whether the activity involves a flow to a multilateral organization. If this is true for the activity, then you can report the activity under Pillar 2. If not, this means that the activity is implemented within your country or in a non-TOSSD eligible country. If this activity then supports international public goods and development enablers and/or address global challenges, you can report it under Pillar 2. If it does not support this, then you cannot report the respective activity in TOSSD. This section presents the TOSSD reporting form and items. It is based on the information in the Chapter 4 of the TOSSD reporting instructions. The first step is to fill in the identification data. In this area, you need to fill in the reporting year, provider country or institution, and the provider agency. Please note that all starred items are mandatory. There, you have to provide information for these reporting items in TOSSD. As explained earlier, you will need the TOSSD code lists for filling in this information. In addition, you can indicate the provider ID number if you have an internal code for this activity. The TOSSD ID number will be filled in by the Secretariat and should be left empty. The TOSSD reporting format requires you to fill in basic data. This includes the recipient of your sustainable development activity and the project title, which you can indicate in English, French, or Spanish. Please find a few best practices for the project title on the right hand of the slide. It would be good if you could provide a clear and concise title within the limit of maximum 150 characters. Moreover, please avoid unnecessary wording. For example, instead of writing that the program aims at improving living standards for small-scale farmers through loans to raise agricultural production, it would be better to simply name the project as Small Farmers Credit Scheme. Lastly, please avoid repeating the name of the sector, which is given in field 11 for the sector. The section on basic data also demands more detailed information about the project. Therefore, you can fill in project descriptions of the activity, including its objectives, plan outcomes and outputs, and time frame. There also exists a reporting item where you can insert an external link where even more detailed information can be found. When filling in the description, bear in mind a few best practices. The description should include a maximum of 8,000 characters. It includes everything that would allow the Secretariat to check the accuracy and consistency of the information provided in the other fields of the TOSSD format, including sector classification. Moreover, it should also allow verifying the TOSSD eligibility of the activity, its contribution to sustainable development. For multi-country projects, it should indicate the countries involved. The descriptions goes hand in hand with the field 9 on the external link. A very important field in TOSSD reporting is the SDG focus, which is mandatory to fill in. This is because activities can only be reported in TOSSD if they contribute to sustainable development. An activity is deemed to support sustainable development if it is directly contributing to at least one of the SDG targets and if no substantial detrimental effect is anticipated on one or more of the other targets. There may be cases where reporters cannot find a direct link with one of the SDG targets. This is due to the fact that SDG targets represent a global ambition and may therefore not encapsulate all dimensions of a given developmental issue in their final agreed wording. If you cannot find a direct link to a target, you can still report it against the goal and provide an appropriate justification in the SDG level explanation field. Please report the values separately by a semicolon. In case no direct link can be found to an SDG target, report the goal as x.0, for example, 2.0 for goal 2. We recommend to limit the SDGs to 10 targets or goals. The assessment of sustainability is made on a case-by-case basis. There are a couple of contentious areas and activities that you can find on the slide. These are, for example, non-renewable and nuclear energy or petrochemical industry. TOSSD respondents mostly excluded these kind of activities. In a few cases, these activities were included as they supported sustainable development in the specific country context. It is important to note that the TOSSD task force is currently discussing further operationalization of sustainability in TOSSD. The TOSSD reporting form requires you to fill in the sector. The sector identifies the specific area within the recipient's economic, social, or environmental architecture that the resource transfer fosters. Reporters can use either the CRS or ISIC classifications that you can find in the TOSSD code lists. The slide provides you an overview of the CRS classification for education that you can use to report the correct sector code, which you will find in the second column. This slide gives you an overview of all broader sectors that are included in the CRS classification. Beyond education, there also exists, for example, communication, agriculture, forestry, fishing, and disaster prevention and preparedness. As an alternative to the CRS classification, you can also use the ISIC classification. This slide shows you the classification for agriculture, forestry, and fishing. Reporters should use the class codes with 3 digits. This slide provides you with an overview of all broader sectors included in the ISIC classification. This includes, for example, manufacturing, construction, or human health and social work activities. In TOSSD, you can provide information on the channel of delivery. The channel of delivery is the first implementing partner. It has implementing responsibility over the funds and is normally accountable to the provider agency by a contract or other binding agreement. Where several levels of implementations are involved, for example, when the provider agency hires a national implementer, which in turn may hire a local implementer, report the first level of implementation as the channel of delivery. On this slide, you can see all broader channel categories, such as public sector institutions or multilateral organizations. To indicate the channel of delivery, reporters should use the channel ID. You can find examples of channel IDs in this table. In addition, you can add the channel name of the full name of the institution implementing the activity. The TOSSD reporting form also includes modality. The modality describes the form in which support is provided, such as budget support, projects, or experts. In the table, you can find the first 5 modalities, including their codes, full names, and clarifications. For example, for projects, you report the code C01. This table is a continuation of the previous slide and shows more modalities that are reportable in TOSSD. This table presents the modality that include the support to refugees protected persons. In the clarifications, you can also find guidance on under which pillar related activities should be reported. For example, support to refugees and protected persons in the provider country is reportable under Pillar 2, while support to this group of people in other countries of asylum that are TOSSD eligible countries should be reported in Pillar 1. Choosing the right channel code and cooperation modality, core or earmarked contributions, is very important, especially when the provider extends the funding to trust funds managed by multilateral organizations. In TOSSD, multilateral organizations are considered as providers and report all activities they implement, regardless of whether they are funded with core or earmarked funding. The Secretariat, and not the reporters, will remove contributions channeled to or through multilateral organizations for all multilateral organizations that report on their outflows in TOSSD to avoid double counting. Reporters have to provide information on the financial instrument. TOSSD resource flows are provided through numerous financial instruments. These are categorized as grants, debt instruments, mezzanine finance instruments, equities, and shares in collective investment vehicles. Included are also instruments that generate contingent liability, but not necessarily a flow from the provider to the recipient, such as in the case of the guarantees. This table provides you with an overview of the broader categories and codes in brackets. Reporters should use subcodes in brackets. The TOSSD reporting form also requires you to fill in information on the financing arrangement. It identifies specific characteristics of the financial arrangement, such as blended finance, Islamic finance, export credits, co-financing arrangement involving recipient counterpart funds. The table presents the codes and full names of financing arrangements reportable in TOSSD. Next to this, reporters also have to fill in the TOSSD pillar for each activity. More details on this were provided in section 2. In TOSSD, you should also report on the framework of collaboration. It describes the broad type of partnership under which the activity is carried out. In TOSSD, these are South-South cooperation or triangular cooperation. Triangular cooperation involves a partnership among three partners. First, the beneficiary partner that requests support to tackle a specific development challenge. The second is the pivotal partner that has proven experience in tackling the issue and shares its resources, knowledge, and expertise to help others do the same. The third is the facilitating partner that helps connect the partners, supporting the collaboration financially and technically. The pivotal and facilitating partners each report on the resources they provide. This graphic visualizes the triangular cooperation, including the three partners. The TOSSD framework also captures several items in volume data. You have to report the currency and use the ISO code for the currency in which the transaction has been undertaken. If you do not find a code for your currency, please indicate the name in letters. Moreover, you should provide information on the amount committed. This is a new amount committed contractually by the provider during the reporting year. That means the face value of the activity. A commitment is a firm written obligation by the provider, backed by the appropriation or availability of the necessary funds to provide specified resources under specified financial terms and conditions and for specified purposes for the benefit of the recipient. Commitments are considered to be made at the date the financial agreement is signed or the obligation is otherwise made known to the recipient. All amounts should be reported in thousands of units or millions for yens. Next to the amount committed, reporters also have to fill in the amount disbursed. This is the amount disbursed, or in other words, expenditures, by the provider during the reporting year. A disbursement is the placement of resources at the disposal of the recipient. The next reporting item is the reflows to the providers, where you have to report the amount paid back to the provider during the reporting year and related to recoveries on grants, amortization of loans, and gains or losses from equity sales. TOSSD also captures the resources mobilized by official development finance interventions from private sources, and where a causal link between the provision of the private finance and the official intervention can be demonstrated. If you provide in-kind technical cooperation, you can also report this in TOSSD. The TOSSD task force has designed a specific methodology to value in-kind technical cooperation, which is defined as technical cooperation implemented using public officials of the reporting country. The main objective is to estimate expenditures in an internationally comparable manner. If a reporting country hires experts in the market to deploy a technical cooperation program, then the price of the contract is considered internationally comparable and does not require a specific methodology. The specific methodology uses the purchasing power parity factor. The PPP methodology is widely used in economic and development studies by multilateral institutions and other actors and is technically easy to implement. The PPP methodology is used by a number of potential TOSSD reporters to specifically measure the opportunity cost of their in-kind technical cooperation. Please note that it is possible to change this methodology if 1,000 providers agree on another one. To report their in-kind technical cooperation, providers need to first separate the cost of the salary of the public officials involved in the implementation of the activity for the time they dedicate to the activity, including preparation, implementation, and follow-up. This is reported in field 24 for the salary cost. Estimates are also reportable. Second, providers should report other related costs, such as per diem, accommodation, and transportation in field 21 for the amounts disbursed. Third, providers should assign in field 14 for the modality, D01, which is for in-kind technical cooperation experts. The TOSSD Secretariat will apply the PPP factor to the salary cost for all countries. This graph shows how the salary costs are calculated. The number of days is multiplied with the average daily wage that should be reported as salary costs. The Secretariat then will apply the PPP factor so that we will have internally comparable salary costs. Taken together with other costs that are reported in amounts disbursed, they will be presented as the total in-kind technical cooperation. If you report loans, you will also need to provide information on the concessionality of the loan. There exists a binary yes or no code indicating the concessionality of the loan according to the IMF definition. On the slide, you can find a link to an IMF calculator for assessing the grant element. You can also provide information on the maturity. This is the interval, or in other words, the number of months, from commitment date to the date of the last payment of amortization. If you report private finance mobilized, you can also indicate the leveraging mechanism by using the code indicating the leveraging instrument used. Please look at Annex F for more information on the methodologies for reporting on resources mobilized. Moreover, there exist multiple codes that identify the origin of the funds mobilized. In this section, how to build a TOSSD reporting system will be explained. This graph shows an overview of a typical TOSSD reporting system. Normally, you would have a central reporting agency that is in the middle of the reporting system. It fulfills multiple tasks. Aid agencies and other government institutions report data to the central reporting agency that then would verify, correct, and store data. The central agency also publishes the data by using different communication tools, such as annual reports. Moreover, it also stores the data in a statistical database. Finally, it validates data for TOSSD reporting and stands in close contact with the Secretariat during this process. It is very important to note that not every provider has or should put in place the same reporting system. This overview should only provide you with some insights into and guidance on how such reporting systems are usually built. New providers can build a TOSSD reporting systems in 7 steps. This and the next slide will present a roadmap that will be explained more in detail in the subsequent slides. Here, I would just like to point out the different steps. The first 4 steps are mobilization, preparation, implementation, and collection reporting review. The final steps are data publication, data dissemination, and policy discussions, feedback, and learning. In the first step, mobilization, it is important to get high-level support for reporting to TOSSD. To achieve this, you should present, first of all, a roadmap such as the one presented in the previous slides. Second, you should also present your strategic objectives. That could be, for example, political objectives such as implementing political commitments from the G20 on the promotion of TOSSD. Other objectives could be to provide transparency and accountability towards citizens or to promote your country as a leader in sustainable development. You could also present a budget with adequate resources that will need to be financed for the position of a TOSSD focal point in the central reporting entity. These resources should also be sufficient to set up an appropriate IT system and for coordination of the various representatives of the reporting entities, such as the organizations of meetings, trainings, workshops. Moreover, you can present a legal or administrative instrument to structure and implement the reporting. For example, a modification of law or government regulation. At the end of this step, relevant senior officials should confirm their willingness to collect and publish TOSSD information. In step 2, you can do a mapping of first of all the necessary data sets or areas where data should be collected and the relevant reporting entities where the data can be found. For example, from the Development Cooperation Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Central Aid Agency. Second, you can do a mapping of the IT system that could be used. This could be, for example, Excel. This is the tool used particularly by country with a few hundred activities and a limited number of reporting entities. Alternatively, you could use a web tool or an internal system. Some statistical teams have access to detailed information on their activities through business management tools, such as enterprise resource planning systems. They retrieve relevant qualitative and financial information from this system for national and other reporting purposes. You can also do a mapping of the possible options for the central reporting entities that, for example, could be the Development Cooperation Agency of National Statistical Offices. Lastly, you can also do a mapping of the data collection process with a timeline that includes data solicitation from the central reporting entity to the reporting entities, data compilation, and data submission. In step 3, you can set up the TOSSD team in the central and relevant reporting entities. Focal points should be formally assigned to the TOSSD tasks, part-time work, in their respective reporting entities. Statistical teams should get a clear mandate to compile and validate TOSSD reporting. The independence of the central reporting entity should be ensured. You can also train all focal points in TOSSD. This includes the reporting instructions, the TOSSD form, and the explanatory notes. Moreover, you could also set up an internal process for regularly updating senior management on progress made in collecting and reporting TOSSD data. In step 4, the central reporting entity should first of all collect data from the relevant reporting entities. Second, it should carry out the necessary quality control. This includes reviewing the data submitted by all reporting entities and ensure they comply with the TOSSD reporting instructions. Quality control also includes getting back to the relevant reporting entity in case of any inconsistency. In general, keep in mind to not send your file to the Secretariat before it is fully reviewed and compliant with the instructions. Third, send the file back to the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat for a review. Throughout the process, stick to the main principles during this phase. This means that you should send data according to the deadlines, be prepared to coordinate with entities to respond in time to the Secretariat's comments and changes to the reporting file, and lastly, be aware that you are responsible for your file, so the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat will always check changes with you. Once the TOSSD data are submitted, the verification by the TOSSD Task Force starts. The TOSSD Task Force Secretariat verifies the conformity of the data with the TOSSD reporting instructions and provides feedback on the data to the focal points. Projects or activities can be removed if they do not meet the criteria. If the Secretariat considers that an activity does not meet the criteria, it requests the reporting country or institution to provide additional justification or suggest removing the activity from TOSSD. The TOSSD Task Force Secretariat then publishes the data in a central TOSSD database. It is important to keep in mind that reporting countries and institutions are ultimately responsible for the quality and accuracy of the data reported. They must ensure that activities and expenditures included in their TOSSD data comply with the TOSSD eligibility criteria. In step 5, data are published on TOSSD.online and therefore are publicly available. You should be prepared to respond to questions from various stakeholders that will look at this data. This includes citizens, journalists, academics, think tanks, civil society organizations, government institutions, and so on. Do not hesitate to use the TOSSD data visualization tool that you can reach via TOSSD.online and get back to the Secretariat for questions and feedback. Step 6 is about data dissemination and policy discussions. First of all, you should communicate at the country level on your data and on how staff, CSOs, academics can use this TOSSD data. Your communication should focus on responding to your strategic objectives as outlined in step 1 on mobilization. You can also consider producing an annual Sustainable Development Report and/or using social media for dissemination. Second, you can organize relevant events and policy discussions on, for example, thematic and sectoral analysis, such as on COVID-19 or peace and security. Step 7 is about feedback and learning. You can implement changes in your Sustainable Development Cooperation policies based on TOSSD policy discussions. Moreover, you can investigate the possibility of expanding the scope of your reporting for the following year. In Pillar 1, you could report new financial instruments, such as equities to developing countries or export credits. In Pillar 2, you could report data from new institutions, such as the Ministry of Research or the Ministry of Defense. In addition, you could apply your lessons learned on how to improve the data collection, reporting, and review process. Lastly, you can train newcomers and avoid staff turnover, particularly in the central reporting entity. You could anticipate staff turnover in the various reporting entities and ensure that newcomers are properly trained ahead of the data collection exercise. This section will provide a summary of key points of this module. In this module, we have outlined several key points. First, the aim of the TOSSD data collection is to gather data at the activity level using the reporting instructions, explanatory notes, the reporting forms, and TOSSD code list. They are all available at www.tossd.org. Second, reporting on the SDG focus and the two pillars is crucial. Third, building a robust TOSSD reporting system in your country or institution is a key success factor to ensuring the quality of the data over time. Fourth, reporting countries and institutions are ultimately responsible for the quality and accuracy of the data reported. They must ensure that activities and expenditures, including in their TOSSD data, comply with the TOSSD eligibility criteria. Lastly, the TOSSD Task Force Secretariat stands ready to support reporting countries and institutions in their efforts.
Thank you very much for your attention.